It is time to turn to Spanish football. Graham Hunter, a very good morning to you. So we'll talk El Clásico. I think it's the only place to start, really. Madrid's first win against Barcelona in the league since 2016. But if you look at it from the actual entertainment point of view, I think it was El Mundo who described the game as decrepit at one point. Gerard Piqué, who was kind of gracious in defeat but still admitted that it was the worst Real Madrid team that he's faced in recent times. It paints a picture that, sure, it's a great result for Real Madrid, but not exactly a great night for El Clásico.
Yeah, you don't invite me on here to be a cheerleader for anything. And this made a pair. The 0-0 draw at the Camp Nou was technically better than this in terms of strategy, the way that individual players shone. In fact, probably better in terms of the quality of football overall, but no goals. This will be remembered because we got 2 goals, 2 strange goals. It was very important for Madrid not to go 5 points behind. But if you're bandying about quotes to me, then Jorge Valdano, not for the first time on, got it right in the lead up. He said, this is the meeting of 2 cojos, two sides that are lame. And we haven't got the time on the show nor on this slot to pin down all the things that ail Spain's 2 biggest teams, which nonetheless are still fighting a head-to-head battle for the title. With 12 matches remaining. None of the other teams are yet good enough to catch them. But particularly in the second half, we simply saw a Real Madrid able to win because, and these are not phrases that I've used with you on this show over the years, they won more 50-50 balls. They won second balls more often. They sprinted and ran past their man more often. I'd love to try to tell you that there was a massive surge in some sort of tactical master play in the second half from Zidane. There wasn't. It took him far too long to put anybody, it happened to be Mariano, born nearer the Camp Nou than the majority of the Barca players, against Jordi Alba, who was knackered, who'd come back early from a hamstring problem, probably shouldn't have played. Kudos to him for saying, I'm up for it, but from about halftime onwards, Jordi Alba was knackered. Zidane could have put another striker on, played down Madrid's right, tested Alba, where the second killer goal finally came from with 90 minutes and added time. So what we watched was, again, a side that, even though there's a tiny margin between them, a point at the moment, said to you over a few weeks now, I think Madrid will win the title. I think they are the better squad, the better 11. I think they're in better shape. Not by much, but I think they're champions elect. Nonetheless, we saw them winning a Clásico that I find it hard to remember, even going back 20 years, when it's been as 2 sides as in disarray as these 2 are at the moment on.
Yeah, it seems that way. And obviously, you look at the performance of Lionel Messi on Sunday, and there has to be a few warning signs, I guess. Like, you can blame it on the way Barcelona play in terms of almost replicating Argentina at this point, just forcing the issue sometimes with Lionel Messi. That probably contributes hugely to how many times he lost possession over the course of the night. But then you had someone like Marcelo celebrating his dispossession like it was a goal. You're shaking your head there, Graham.
I am, Owen, because, you know, it's our job, broadcasting, writing, to tell it as we see it, to take risks, to sometimes not deliberately seek opprobrium and clicks. That's nonsense. And my life is better because of Leo Messi, starting with being a lover of football, and he makes your heart soar. I don't care if you're Barcelona or Argentina or not. He's changed my professional career. It's been a privilege to be working and to be alive in the era of Leo Messi. But since November, I've been writing consistently, broadcasting, that Lionel Messi is wildly off form for his standards. Sometimes the goals keep coming. Last week against Eibar, he hit 4. The assists have flowed, and you can say because he's so extraordinary that he's still been head and shoulders above his teammates. But the things you picked up on because you're astute, if you think about the number of times in the way in which the ball is lost, he always had a high percentage of losing possession because he's the guy who takes risks. He's the guy in the final sprint where the tackles come flying in, where teams mark him with 3 or 4 players. and yet on form he still gets away from them. Now these things you were highlighting, where the ball is given away needlessly, where he's tackled and he can't run after the player. For example, when Marcelo sprinted, you talked about when Messi was right through, I think from a De Jong pass, he'd been wildly offside, walked back, hit the line of offside, spiraled, and De Jong released him. At that point, Marcelo caught him easily. Now, Marcelo is leaner. Marcelo is in better physical shape than he's been for quite some time. But in the old days, that wouldn't have been a contest. And again, Messi choosing to go into little dark areas of the pitch when he's got the ball at his feet, that he would automatically, irrespective of his physical shape, his brain would have said to him, now release, play the wall pass, dribble left, not right. Since November, he has been repeatedly making these errors. Is it physical shape? Is it that he's just totally pissed off with what's going on around him, which looks very feasible the more that it carries on? But the more that teams block him and close him down, Napoli, are you listening? The more in which it's difficult for him to get by teams other than doing the things that make him a genius, the more he's begun to look like a player who's easily asphyxiated. And that's not a phrase that, even though he's 32, I expected to be using for another 3 or 4 years, Owen.
So it would have to concern you then about the immediate future of Lionel Messi's form. Of course, he's still going to continue to be an excellent player, possibly the best player in his team. Do you think he will return to the position of being the undisputed greatest in the world at a point? Like, you can debate about whether or not a player will reach a cliff or whether or not it'll be a slow decline. It may not happen for a few years yet. We would like to think that perhaps we're wrong about this, but one or the other is going to happen. What do you think it is going to be?
My best and most honest assessment is that he had a poor summer where, excessive football and an injury combined to lose him a pre-season. He got injured again almost as soon as he came back. He then had, in the 5, 6, 7 weeks leading up to the awards, where he won both Best and Ballon d'Or, he was playing not only high goal football, but he was playing with electricity in his boots. It was tantalizing. It was brilliant. And then in this instance, the decline began to look slow, and then it kind of fell off a cliff in terms of individual form. The stats look good because if he's given space, then fine. But in my honest opinion, it's a combination of the fact that physically he reached this season getting buffeted about by bad injuries, a calf problem that wouldn't go away. And he is looking around himself and saying, they promised me better players. They promised me a brand of football that suited me. I've lost Suarez, his best strike partner ever. We're not very good. His interview before the Napoli match said, if we don't stop committing little tonterias, little stupidities on the pitch, then we're not good enough to win the European Cup. My diagnosis is that both physical and mental right now, he's treading water. And therefore, back to be the outright best in the world, that's something only he can answer. But back to being completely different from this, yeah, I do fully expect that, yes.
I'm just interested, Graham, in the general well-being of La Liga this season, because I've felt that the Premier League has kind of lacked proper depth, and the performances in Europe haven't been great in the last 16 rather. But I mean, you look at Barca and Real, they even Atletico, as much as they beat Liverpool, they're a fairly limited team. What sort of state is La Liga in at the moment?
Johnny, that's the one. Yeah, I'd love to be able to write a PhD thesis on that. If I'm honest, over and over again, there's been asset stripping from bigger clubs whereby players are beginning to now leave at much younger ages. I think that La Liga has been not only extraordinarily healthy domestically for 2 decades, it's been utterly dominant in Europe, probably in club and European terms over the last 20 years, even if you include Germany or Brazil or Holland at their very best. In my opinion, this has been the most dominant combination of national and club football in the history of the European game. Does there inevitably have to be a decline when sometimes great thinkers, never mind the playing resources, but football directors or presidents or coaches, the jigsaw pieces that go together to make things exceptional, either decline or go away or retire or get sated. Is La Liga right now as powerful, as technically gifted as what YouTube have been used to me listing their benefits to you over 20 years? Johnny, no. I think that they're not far off, but is it 5-star right now in many aspects, not just in terms of the way in which there's been a brain drain away from La Liga because there's bigger money elsewhere and outside the top 2 clubs, that's factually true. Then I think there are difficulties. And what's more, the youth system keeps producing brilliant new talent. But my fear is if that brilliant, it's just like fishing. If you don't let the stocks grow, then eventually you won't be able to have fish for your tea.
Can I ask you about Vinícius' performances at the weekend, Graham? It's been an interesting week for him, obviously missing a sitter against Manchester City midweek, possibly scapegoated. I'm not sure what the Madrid media was like in the aftermath of that game, to then scoring the winning goal at the weekend. Like, sometimes we have to just hold on for a moment and realise that he's only 19 years of age. So, I'm interested, what's been the biggest criticism of Vinícius up until this point? And is he going some distance to disproving his doubters so far this season?
Did you use that? Was that Freudian? Did you use that phrase, hold on a minute, because you saw my face getting ready to pounce? Right. When the ball came in against City, he probably lurches and he falls over, misses a chance. He did make the goal for Isco to go 1-0 up in that very same game. And therein, in exactly that little, that jovial repartee between you and I, therein lies the debate about Vinícius. Vinícius, he's 19, mate. He's a guy for whom finishing is a lot more natural than he's making it look at Real Madrid. He scored 15 senior goals more quickly than Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo did. At Flamenco, he played far more centrally. He played second striker. It was far easier for him not being on the wing coming in to be striking off either of his 2 feet when he finished. And in general, you know the answer to your own question. In general, there has been a degree, I think too much of a degree of frustration about the fact that sometimes he seems to get a rush of blood to the head at Real Madrid. He used a really good phrase to help explain this. He said that one training session at Real Madrid is worth 10 games of experience in the Brazilian league. And that's quite a perspicacious self-assessment from a kid who at that stage was 18. At the moment, what I think is absolutely evident is that there's a gem here. It's not just that he's fast, although he is brutally fast. It's the fact that technically he is extremely gifted. He also has 2 things massively in his favour. He's extremely willing to learn. He wants to be taught. This is not some arrogant show-off. I've got the ball, the crowd need to bill and coo at my ability. He wants to learn. And the second thing is, I've commentated at Bernabeu on Sunday night with Michael Laudrup. Now, Michael at 19 was a much better player than Vinícius is, but Michael picked out the fact, and I like that because it's something I've been proposing in writing on this medium too, that, if you have ability and you try things, you will fail. And how do you react to that? When the crowd groans, when the media are on your back, as you pointed out, saying he can't finish, which is just monosodium glutamate to me. It's just like pigeonholing about, okay, but talk about the things he can do. When he fails, when things don't go right, industrial rubber confidence, back up, try it again, try something different, learn from the experience, but do it again. Don't hide, don't shrivel. In all the sports you cover, in Johnny and Jar, there are players who, when the pressure's on them, they pretend to be showing for the ball, they pretend to want to be protagonists, but they don't. Now, that's not Vinícius, and that is useful while we're in a process of development. But boys, Johnny just asked me about quality in La Liga. Believe me, Vinícius is quality.
Right, that's good news. It seems that he's been kind of almost incorrectly labelled as a certain player at this point, but possibly unfairly so, and I think definitely unfairly so if you look at the evidence of the weekend. Just before we let you go, Graham, Sven-Göran Eriksson, he's on the Big Interview podcast this week. Interesting stuff about David Beckham in this piece.
Yes, about David. Thank you for mentioning that. That's not pre-arranged in case anybody's worried. Look, we travelled that week. We travelled 9,000 kilometres round trip to go up to Sunne to see Sven-Göran Eriksson. And I was interested myself in what we might get. I promise you, on my honour, and everybody listening into Off the Ball AM, Sven-Göran Eriksson, when he begins to talk about Sinisa Mihajlovic, Roberto Mancini, and then Beckham is the best audio in our 97 interviews that we've done and 14 million listens. He's extraordinary on Mancini. The depth that he goes into in describing the man, the footballer, the coach, his foibles, his flaws, his positives. And then Sven, without me asking him to do so, leaps on and goes, yeah, but he's no David Beckham. And sitting across the table from him, when he builds Mancini up in such depth, and remember this is 20 years now since Sven became the only coach to take Lazio to Serie A title, only the second Swede to win the Scudetto in Italy after Nils Lidholm. He's extraordinarily different from the man, again, who was pigeonholed as coach of England, leaving Lazio immediately after winning the title. It's an interview that, I swear people will get a lot back from if they choose to listen to it. He's an extraordinarily interesting and still very, very vital man.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Good stuff, Graham. Thanks a million for taking the call.